We are moving at the speed of light with a set of capabilities that we don't fully grasp yet. It's probably the biggest convergence of multidisciplinary things that we've ever seen in mankind's history. And these are the words of our guest today, expert, just amazing speaker and guest, and just all-around great guy, Faisal Hogue. And what he's trying to answer here is, as artificial intelligence transforms everything from business to daily life, how should leaders balance the immense opportunities of AI with its potentially dire risks to humanity, purpose, and society? These are some seriously deep questions that we're diving into today with Faisal. He is, if you don't know who Faisal is, well, he is a serial entrepreneur, executive, multi best-selling author, thought leader. He, in the terms of leadership, technology, organizational design. Right now, he is looking at AI, and he has a deep connection to AI and its benefits. He's got a huge passion for it, especially in specific fields, which you'll get into as we go through the podcast today. He's also an advocate for purposeful ethical leadership, and especially as AI expands, grows, and becomes basically mainstream. Today, you're going to have three key takeaways out of this podcast. First off is AI is just not another technology. We dive into the whole thing about AI, its scope, its speed, and what that means for you as a leader is that you must consider far more than just profit and efficiency. AI is really reshaping what it means to work, lead, and most importantly, be human. We're also diving into the balance between opportunities and threats. Us as leaders, we must harness AI's potential, think breakthroughs in medicine, research, accessibility, and so on. Yet we must actively protect against social isolation, job loss, and the erosion of purpose and empathy in teams and society. And then the final deep topic we dive into today is purpose-driven leadership is essential. We talk about how imperative shifts from how fast can we automate to what is the true human impact of this technology. And what does that mean as us as leaders? We're called as leaders to use systems thinking, empathy, and courage to shape a future where technology serves humanity and not the inverse, a la The Matrix. And yes, I'm a huge fan of that movie. And if you haven't seen it, I'm guessing you're probably younger than I. And if you have seen it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This episode, ladies and gentlemen, is jam-packed and super pertinent to today's climate that we're in as leaders. The AI revolution is here. It is everywhere. I use it on a daily. I use it to help me produce these podcasts for you and so much more. And no doubt you are seeing it as well. So we go deep today. We get philosophical, but most important, we get human. Without further ado, are you ready for this? All right, let's do it. Welcome one, welcome all to the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast, a weekly podcast series dedicated to helping you hit peak performance across the three domains of leadership, those being leading yourself, leading your team, and leading your organization. This podcast couples my 20 years of military experience as a senior Canadian Army officer with world-class guests to bring you the most complete podcast of leadership going. And for more, feel free to check out our website at movingforwardleadership.com. And with that, let's get to the show. Faisal, welcome back to the podcast, sir. So good to have you again.
Thanks for having me, Scott.
It's always a good time. It's always a good time when I have you on the show.
Thank you.
We've had you on before. It was fantastic. I've had you at work. It was fantastic. You're back again. Expectations are high. I'm sorry. But but no, you're going to do great.
Thanks.
All right, so today we are talking about the topic of day because I've done so many interviews about AI and leadership, and then when I got the pitch for you to come back on the podcast, like Faisal's always got a spot on the podcast, and we're going to talk about AI again. Let's talk about AI again. But I can't wait to hear your perspective about
Sure.
AI. And first thing, like, why does this even matter for us as leaders? Like, isn't this just how things are, or they should be? Like, why should we care? I guess.
Look, I think we are extremely mistaken if we think that AI is everything. Also, if we think that it's just like another technology. Neither of those assumptions are correct. We are um, moving at a light speed with a set of capabilities that we don't fully grasp yet. There's not just the technology implication. There's cultural. There's economical. There's geopolitics, security, consumer behavior. All of those things are completely intertwined. It's probably the biggest convergence of multidisciplinary things that we have ever seen in mankind's history. So, from that point of view, I think the conversations we're having is well warranted. People may say, "Well, it's too much of a hype." Yeah, with any new technology, there's always a bit of a hype, right? But if you really sit back and think about it all, maybe there is not enough hype in terms of implications. You know, so it's important topic to have, important topic to talk about, and there are a lot of things that are needs to in place to protect humanity as we know it.
Wow. So what I'm hearing from you in my very simple terms, and I'll translate it. I'm 16 years old. I just got my learner's permit, and Dad just handed me the keys to a supercharged Uber sports car, and he says, "Go ahead and take it for a rip." Is that something similar along those lines?
Yeah, except this supercar doesn't necessarily want to listen to you either, right? So,
Yeah,
so even though you may be a great driver, doesn't mean that you have full control over the car, right? So
absolutely.
yeah, I mean it's the nascent nature of our understanding as users, as consumers, but is also the capability that we're creating that's not understood by the capability or by us altogether also well, right? So there's a lot of implications.
So, so you mentioned that our lack of understanding, its capabilities, and stuff like this, and our ignorance right now. But what is it that we do know right now?
Look, I mean, so first of all, if you look at, since we're talking about AI, most people just look at AI as what gotten, they got exposed to it in last couple of years as generative AI kind of parked up in the radar, and it has become highly consumerized in the sense that anybody can access it and anybody can talk to it, ask questions, get answers, even forming relationships, right? Because you're talking to something, it talks back to you. But the history of AI and the types of AI that are already out there are manifold. It's been, it's as old as computer science in terms of basic algorithm, predictive modeling, et cetera, et cetera. Now we're going into agentic AI. We're already talking about AGI, which is the general intelligence, meaning that it will have the cognition level to think for itself, et cetera, et cetera. What large language model or the chatbots that we all getting kind of used to using as consumer is is the ability to siphon data from anywhere and everywhere and then kind of have a semi intelligent conversation. It's not always accurate because it's I mean it's data garbage in, garbage out, just like we all know in computer science, right? But it's a little more elaborate and faster, and it's got a lot more computing power. So it's more pervasive, if I can use that word. So when you look from that context, there's tons of opportunities, but there are also a lot of threats. Like, for example, I mean, you can, with the computing power, and it's a combination of hardware, software, models, data, all those layers, right? So if you look at from that context, our ability to look do good with that kind of capability are enormous. So, for example, if you're a researcher doing cancer research and you have set of data on a particular type of patient, you can use predictive modeling to very much customize personalized treatment for a cancer patient, which is already happening to a certain extent, and which is an enormous progress for a cancer patient. And as you know, it's very dear and near to my heart because of my son is a cancer survivor, right? So there are good things like that, or let's say weather forecasting or pattern recognition for the planetary changes that's going on, geopolitical changes. And you and I both are sort of familiar with geopolitics, and given our the day jobs, I mean, there's tons of opportunity in security and management and that sort of a thing, utilizing this thing. Bad stuff is that when because it has cognition level, or somewhat of a cognitive nature to this of this technology, we're outsourcing our humanity, right? In the sense that you want to write an email, just go to a chatbot and ask the chatbot to write an email, or open up your email and you're asking your co-pilot or whatever platform that you use to proofread, but then they say make it better, and it makes it better. So it's just slowly, gradually. Or you say, look, here's my abstract, write an article or write a full 2-page summary on this, and it will generate. And so you're gradually outsourcing, and then you're now already hearing like there are these the persona, AI persona or character. I'm sure I don't know whether you know this story of this 16-year-old killing himself because he developed this relationship with the character, generated by character.ai, and it formed a relationship, and ultimately, based on the conversation, he killed himself. So there are a lot of those side effects that are happening. I mean, if we thought social media was very bad for younger generation, I think these algorithmic agents that's going to be manipulative, or because the AI tends to, especially the large language model, the business model is such that it lives off engagement. So they will have to keep you engaged by speaking to you, so you're pleased, right? So that's how they hook you. So if you thought the social media was bad with algorithm echo chamber, this is going to be 1,000 times more impactful in terms of manipulating us. And you already see it, like you open up your I don't know, let's say Netflix, and it's telling you to watch the next movie. It is slowly creeping into our lives. There's more and more stories where people preferring the chatbot driven therapist versus actual therapist, which is completely wrong, because the chatbots or these algorithms don't have the human experience context to make the proper judgment, but we're doing it. Now, there's good thing is that, look, I have some symptoms. I have fever, I have a headache. What shall I take for it? There is a benefit to it if you don't have access to the doctor, because those are basic fundamental things, right? So what does all this matter means? I think what it means that for domain expert, if you're a domain expert, at least in the short term, and you're using these technology to learn more about a subject matter that you're already familiar with and pretty good at it, and you can ask, have the proper argument and actually kind of codify whatever you're given by these different technological engine, then you'll be a phenomenal beneficiary because your work will get more productive. Bad thing is that all the stuff I talked about, and then you add economic element to it, you're already seeing large tech companies and other companies have started to lay off people because of the AI capability, because redundant work does not needs to be done by human beings. It can be processed by agentic AI type of model where the definition of agentic AI is that it's an agent that does the work. So you can assign set of work and it does the work for you, and especially if it's repeated work, then you're basically driven off patterns, so you don't need that level of human cognition. So there's opportunity and threats, and the question is how far we take it. And we don't really have a whole lot of regulation in North America. I just saw that European Union just now declared is a urgent regulation where they're forcing all the vendors to expose their model and data sources, and which is important because otherwise we're going to get these biased sources of information. So there's a lot to, you can take any of whatever I just said and unpack this for days and days and days, right? And in the context of writing the book, we went back and forth, but what we ended up where we ended up is that, look, we're not going to know all the answer. All we can do is maybe come up with a method or a model that allows our thinking model and thinking process, right? How do we explore opportunity, but also how do you guard ourselves as an individual, as an organization, as a government, to so that we can get the best out of it, right? And we can't really predict what's going to happen. Even the founders of AI theory and technology, like Jeffrey Hinton, are sending warning signs, right? Because if we're not careful, we kind of be we can self-destruct. So I'm going to stop because I can babble on forever about this,
Wow.
as you can
Holy,
see.
when I had you on at work, we talked about
Right.
this topic, and I still feel, and I got a copy of your book, and it's up on my screen. I've gone through it, and I still feel unprepared for this episode. Uh, I just actually, and to go way back, or and that's not a knock or
Sure.
anything, Faisal. Like, that was all gold. Everything you
Thanks.
said there it wasn't blabbing on. It was legit.
No,
You just, like, you can tell, one, you're passionate about it, but I just can't get past that statement that you talked about, that 16-year-old killing himself because of
yeah,
AI. And I was just like,
yeah.
oh my God, this is terrible.
It is. It's not just with kids. There's a this was a there was an expose
Wow.
by CNN. And they were talking about that. They were also talking about this mechanic. This is an adult in his 40s, or I think it's in his 40s. He has developed this relationship with chatbot, and he has found his spiritual calling with this chatbot. And as a result, he's ignoring his young family. Now imagine that scenario, right? So you're psychologically and emotionally investing into something because it's not as complicated or as complex or contradictory as human beings. So it tries to appease you. So if you most of us, we all like to be acknowledged. We like to be listened to. We all like to be uh, said that we are right. We're not wrong. And so if something else, not our spouse or our friend or our coworkers, that constantly and if you have a weak personality, you're going to be really hooked into this, right? And you're going to make life decisions that are necessarily not real, and you're living in an alternative reality, and the psychological impact are enormous. You're asking reading about books and reading my book and whatnot, I've written about the human impact, the technological impact on human psychology and organizational psychology, on and off, but never really as ga- never gotten into this depth. And it started with the book, and then I now have like a regular column on Psychology Today, and I'm just amazed by people's desire to learn about these impacts, the human impact, the real psychological and philosophical impact of these technology, which really boils down to, what is humanity and what part of humanity do you protect, and do we need to protect it, right? Ultimately, do we need to protect it for the benefit of humanity as a whole? So it is fascinating to say the least. I mean, it's terrifying. And I have a young son, as you know. I mean, I'm terrified for their generation. I'm terrified even more for the generation after, because they're not going to have the same background, let's say, as you did or I did, where we grew up with analogs and we had to figure things out and grind it out, and with grit and resiliency. And now you're just totally outsourced to machines, thinking, doing, performing, whatever. It's a kind of a food for thoughts, and it's going to have a profound impact on uh, the workforce and people and society and government, et cetera, et cetera. I think we're getting um, worse than detached. We're getting disengaged in many ways, right? Because think about, think about. I mean, you know this, given your military background. I mean, imagine, when you make a when we have tried, especially post World War II, collectively to avoid war, because we know how gruesome and how painful and how brutal war can be, right? And so now, and because part of the reason we know that is some of us were not born and we didn't play a part in that, because we read history and we know it, and our grandfathers told us how brutal, because they were that brutal fight, and they know how painful it is. Imagine if it's detached and now you just fighting with drones is detached. So you're not really feeling the pain, right? So pain is a great teacher of what, how to survive, but also what not to do to other human beings. So if you get detached from that, something else is going to break, right? Because we're not really forming that emotional connection with other human beings.
Yeah, like I could go on an easy tangent here about studies with drone pilots from that are based North America but operating overseas and Middle East
Yeah.
and stuff like that during the Afghan and Iraq wars. There's all kinds of studies now about how the issues that they faced. Just simply going out doing missions and going to Walmart and grabbing milk and eggs on the way home. It's crazy. But if I was the leader listening to what you're saying here, like, holy crap, on one hand, I got these warning signs. I got, this issue. It's like, I'm touched because of that 16-year-old kid story. I'm also touched because of that dude. I'm also frustrated. Like, what the hell, bro? Uh, like, come on. But like, the humanity side of me is like going blink, 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 red,
Yeah.
red, red. But
Yeah.
then on the other side, I got the business, and the business is going cut costs, more profits, opportunity, go, go,
Right.
go. What's your advice to the leader to balance this? Because like it's to me like
I
I'm not even there yet, and I feel like being torn apart. You know what I
yeah, I
mean?
mean yeah, absolutely. It's look, what we haven't learned as human society is that we don't, especially if you look at current state of business and society, we're very much focused on short-term gains, right? Because you talk about efficiency and profit. I've been an entrepreneur pretty much my entire life. You look at how do you create value, and that value is given to your customer at the lowest cost possible, and that's how you make money, right? And that's how you And during that production process, you have to make sure that your cost is leaves margin for profit. That's how you survive, right? As a business. Now, the question becomes is that, okay, so that sounds good. And if I can I mean, there's already been talks around having the next, the unicorn that's, built by two people, not thousands of people that requires build multi-billion or trillion-dollar companies, because a lot of those workforce are going to be these, this AI agents and whatnot. But the ultimate question boils down to, it's a moral and ethical question in many ways, right? So yeah, and and I actually wrote a piece calling the economic case for not, for not over automation, because ultimately it's people who buy stuff, right? So if you have tons of people who doesn't have any jobs, how do they buy stuff? And so you can argue, well, we're going to have this universal pay scheme somehow, and that way everybody will have means to support themselves. Well, okay, even if you buy so you're flipping the definition of capitalism to some other definition, call it a quasi-socialism, quasi whatever the case may be. But then you have to ask an even more human moral question, because you can take a simple thing as, like, I don't know, let's say look at Maslow's hierarchy, where human beings are fulfilled by purpose. So, and purpose is not just having food and shelter. It's like self-actualization of uh, being productive and adding some value, doing something meaningful. So if everything is outsourced, so what's your value? And your value, when you're questioning your value, and again, I go back to this conflict zone conversation. If you look at the conflict zones in the globe, around the globe, it always starts with younger people who doesn't have a purpose, and they're frustrated because they're not being able to add value. And some of them are poor, but many cases it's not. You look at what happened during the pandemic, that Wall Street, taken over by younger people. They were not all poor people. They were actually came from pretty significantly wealthy families, right? Because they lost their purpose. They couldn't figure out what their purpose is. So you can imagine a scenario while we are driven by high profit margins and doing more with less, and efficiency, we're going to actually cannibalize our own global, capitalistic infrastructure, and that cannot be good. And then you can go even farther. We're going to create actually more crisis at a social level, because younger generation are not going to can't figure out what to do with their lives, right? It doesn't matter whether they have money in the pocket and food at the table. They still got to be productive and stay engaged. And not everybody will become a researcher. There's need for people who go fix a car, or go, I don't know, go run, like, drive cars. There's a need for that. And even the most creative work is being challenged because of AI. I mean, like, I find, like, I will read something. I said, why does this look so familiar? And I'll find out that it's a AI rephrasing the stuff that I wrote like 15 years ago. Right? And it's happening with even the songwriters and musicians, because it's doctored up, but its original work is not from there. So here's where, you said about leaders. I think every leader has not just only the right, it must have the foresight to ask this tough question and hold our collective society responsible to create the legal and moral infrastructure that protects us, right? If you're going to create something with these digital enabled things, then you have to disclose where the source is coming from, because it goes back to IP rights and human privacy rights, et cetera, et cetera, right? I mean, it's, and, already seeing fake, like, not 2 weeks ago, you saw our Secretary of State's audio and video being doctored up and sent out to other foreign politicians as original message from our Secretary of State, which is completely wrong, right? So I think that it's high time when you talk about what's the role of what should a leader do. Every leader should start thinking about this thing and start becoming very vocal about the future of humanity. I think we are very much focused on the future of current geopolitics, which is obviously important. But I think this piece that we're talking about is even far more important than the current geopolitical state of the global because, politician comes and goes, leaders comes and goes. But the things that we're putting together now is going to impact generation after generation. And we may not have a humanity if we don't get our stuff together.
Wow, that's wow. I don't get dumbfounded on my own show often. I am currently speechless. There's so much that just went through my head as you were talking, and I could have listened to you for hours. I'm sure you could probably keep going. But like one thing which popped in my head, two things which I'll hit on that popped in my head as you spoke there. One is, it's a bit of a dichotomy what I heard from you. So let's bring these tools in. Let's reduce costs. Let's reduce our manpower to the point where we have no one working. Therefore, no one's making any money. Therefore, no one's able to buy the products that we're necessarily selling.
Yeah.
So we're actually, putting ourselves into the ground.
We're cannibalizing our own markets, right? Because who buys, right? So that's a very fundamental thing, right? And then you can say, okay, we talk about the measurement, right? I wrote a piece, in Fast Company not too long ago that we're measuring the benefit of AI in a wrong way because we're chasing how fast, how efficient, but we're not. At the end of the day, the measurement should be human impact. So, for example, the positive example that I was giving, that okay, well, if you can personalize a particular treatment for a particular patient, that's a real human impact, right?
Right.
If you allow a person who cannot speak ability to communicate and make their lives better, and that person can contribute to society, that's a real impact, right? So we have to think in that context. Our current work, whether that's public sector or private, public sector to a certain extent, but private sector certainly not wired that way. We are, because if you look at private sector, we are all about top line growth and bottom line bottom line impact, right? But we're not service oriented. As much as we talk about servant leadership and service orientation, we're not really talking about human impact from the things we do. In public sector, public agencies exist because we want to take care of our citizens. And many of us have that calling in us built in. That's why many of us go into public sector. But in private sector, certainly that's not the motivation. And even if you look at public sector, public sector, they'll be forced to kind of follow the same model as private sector. This is why I'm saying that's a high time that we, all the leaders, whatever you are, whether you're running a small company, large company, a military leader, whatever, it's high time we ask these fundamental human question, philosophical question, because it has profound impact. What happens to our children and their children? It may not have a great impact, maybe in the next 20 years, but it certainly is going to have a major impact in 30 years. Or sooner.
No doubt. Yeah, I would say, probably even sooner. Like I foresee, like my children, and they're young, but they're not that young per se. They're 10 and 7. They are growing up in that space now. The computer to me, AI to them is the computer to me.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's
right?
exactly right.
So,
Yeah.
that was fundamentally changing. So I can only imagine what the changes they're facing.
Yeah, I mean,
One of
look,
the
it's
things I hear.
isolation is a. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You're the guest. So,
No, I was saying that, and the bigger issue for them is going to be the social isolation. Super connected, yet completely disconnected, right? I mean, like that social skill of, like when I was driving today, you go to I don't know, a rest stop, a gas station, and standing in a line and talking to somebody to get your food versus you go, you enter and you're not talking to anybody, you have a kiosk placing the order, and then it tells you the number, and then something else tells you that it's ready. You're completely avoiding any kind of human interaction. So this skill of negotiation, how to live in a society whereby there are other people, and you have to be courteous, and you have to be looking, you have to consider their limitations or whatever. That's all. We're completely killing that process of learning in younger generation by all this automation, right? So what's the problem with that? Well, the problem is we're gonna have a very dysfunctional society. That's the problem.
I don't necessarily disagree with you. However, I will admit I actually prefer the kiosk because I find they get my orders get mixed up sometimes, and I don't
Yeah,
have that
well,
issue.
right. See, but that's a convenience. So you're outsourcing the convenience by omitting the people interaction.
But you go back to your point though. Like, let's bring it back to your point.
Yeah.
Therefore, I'm not actually exercising my conflict resolution, because if I get my burger
Yes.
that has the stuff on it that I didn't want, and now I don't, do I go like, oh, do I just suck it up and just eat it? Probably, because I'm usually busy and I'm probably in the truck, to be honest, already on my way. Or do I go back and say, excuse me, sir, excuse me, ma'am, like, this is not, my order is not correct. Can you please have it
Right.
right? Like,
Right.
and
And yeah. Go ahead.
some people would have severe anxiety over that because they're
100%.
not exercising that.
Right. Yeah. And so you talk about conflict resolution, right? Add to that maybe if you are a little more evolved, you will develop the empathy that maybe the person who gave you the food, that person is having a bad day. And is it really worth going off of him or her because they put a extra lettuce when you had wanted no lettuce? Is it really worth it? I don't know. This is that's what I mean by it's like the caring for humanity. It's a important skill, right? Because it boils down to empathy, not apathy, empathy, and it boils down to being mindful. It boils down to conflict resolution. These are fundamental leadership skills, right? So I mean, your show is all about leadership. I mean, it's fundamental leadership skills. So how do we learn those leadership skills if we're not interacting with other people? Because complexity of humanity is what teaches us how to deal with complex environment and complicated situation, and that's what makes leaders. So if you take that all away, then only few people are going to be leaders. That's not a good thing.
People like you and I got jobs forever. And by the way, it's pickles, not lettuce, that I don't like. God, I
Okay,
hate pickles. But no, you make some super valid points, and let's bring it back, because the listener here is like, okay, guys, like, you're talking very philosophical now, super high level. Like, I'm just running a team of 10 people or a company of 20 people, what have you. But to bring it back, you bring up really good points, because as our workforce gets younger, the newer generation come in, they're going to have less and less interaction with people. Therefore, as you said, they don't have the conflict resolution skills that people used to have, right? Or they don't have the resiliency that people used to have. And what we're going to find is, more and more conflicts, higher staff turnover, because people are just getting tired of the constant conflict in one workplace. They go to where the grass is quote unquote greener on the other side, only to find out it's exactly the same way there, because it's the same type of people lacking these skills. And as a leader, your time is getting sucked up with, conflict resolution, managing crisis within the team, going back through the hiring process, and you nailed the most important thing, I believe. And the most important thing is that natural leaders, i.e., people who have had the exposure from a young age in, with others and leading teams at a young age and have grown up through in that environment are no longer existent. So now, how are people getting these skills?
Yeah, look, and I'll add one more, a twist to this, because the next generation workforce is just not going to be human beings. You're gonna have all those agents to manage, right? Agents meaning the AI agent that you're actually are deciding which part of the workload is supplemented by non-human workforce. So the leader will have to not only be expert at these softer skills, so-called softer skill, which is going to be the most important skill, the emotional intelligence and all the things that goes with it, empathy, mindfulness, etc., etc. But also having the system thinking so that they know, well, these are the most uh, logical but yet thoughtful tasks that needs to be done by machine, while I don't isolate and create a threat environment in my workforce so they feel like they can be replaced, because nobody wants to work in an environment where they feel like I could be replaced uh, tomorrow with some sort of not even another human being, with some sort of AI agent. So the balancing act of the leaders is now even more challenging, because you are both a emotionally intelligent leader, but you're also a deep system thinker to figure out um, which element of your total process can be automated or outsources without creating that dilemma and the what they call the psychologically safety environment, right? Because the workforce needs to feel that they're valued. If they're constantly feeling they're undervalued and they could be replaced at any moment's notice, then so this is so the leadership challenges are going to be increasingly difficult. So you may ask, okay, so what do we do? So the do is, it goes back to what we kind of start with, this very high philosophical question, that we have to start asking question, right? And we have to start asking a question about, well, who are we trying to impact? Is it what is organization anyway? What is the and who are we trying to serve, right? If it's not people centric, if it's not human centric, then we kind of lost it, right? So whatever we're doing as a leader, we have to start with that fundamental purpose question: that is it going to impact my people? And if it does impact my people, of course I have to survive. Somebody may say, okay, Faisal, that's great. How the hell my organization survive without making money, or without doing the things that I'm asked to do? I'm going to be out of business. So obviously there's that element to it, right? So this is why I said in the very beginning, uh, as we got deeper and deeper, what I found out, that I actually knew very little how to answer these questions, right? And this is where he ended up with these frameworks by saying, look, stop logically thinking, but ask these bigger question, philosophical question, and start raising your voice, because ultimately it's our collective role as a society to protect each other as human beings. It is that important, right? Because and so if we do that, then the question of reskilling and the future of work kind of falls in place, because we if every leader was concerned about his or her people and how do they protect those people first, then all that kind of comes along with it, right? Because it's coming from that purpose-driven, heart-centric leadership, servant-centric leadership mantra, versus can I automate this faster than anybody else? because I don't think automating faster than anybody else is gonna protect your business anyway, or protect your organization anyway, because at certain point, I mean, we're kind of enamored, right? I mean, like, the other day I was in New Jersey and I was having lunch at this restaurant, and and it was like a sushi restaurant, and there comes this robot, with the tray full of food, and it's cute, it's novelty because it's new, right? So it sounds great. But I mean, I don't want to take the food from the robotic tray. I want to tell somebody I don't have enough wasabi, or I don't have this, or I don't. I mean, I want to have the conversation. How did the chef made this, and where did it come from? I don't want to have that conversation with the some robotic, even though that knowledge may be more accurate. I want that unfiltered storytelling, from somebody who is a human being, right? So as a business owner, would I attract more customer if I had all human? Or would I lose more customer because now half of my staff is robots? So it's so in that example, you may actually lose more customer because you have automated, but you turn up a whole bunch of customers, right? So you have to carefully do that risk assessment in terms of benefits and the human impact. And human impact implies to customers, the coworkers, the suppliers, all of it, right?
So much to consider and unpack here. And I love your point. Just like me with this podcast, every time I do an interview, I realize more and more how I don't know anything when it comes to leading teams. How little do I know? And here you are realizing that, and just in this super, I would say, new yet extremely advancing at extreme pace technology. Like we're not even close to the end. This is not even close to anywhere near the end. This is just the beginning. And just like computers, like I said earlier, like I wouldn't have thunk that my phone that I carry around with me every day is like a bazillion times more powerful than that Pentium 4 580X or whatever it was at the time.
286, yes.
Right,
285
running Windows 3.11 for
yeah.
work groups. That was the bomb back in the 90s, let me tell you, before
Yeah.
Windows 95 came out.
A friend of mine, said to me other day that, well, I love your stuff, but it always boils down to, you keep saying it's it's an unprecedented, unpredictable change that we're going through. It seems like you've been saying that for 20 years. I said, yes, because that's the norm, and that's the constant. And I said, but this time it's not just unprecedented, it's accelerated, and there's a lot of other factors that's in play, in the sense that it's not just the technology, it's geopolitics, the economic model that we're going to be faced with, we're already facing with. If you talk to most people, you'll see that they're fatigued. They're excited, but they're also extremely fatigued, right? I mean, the younger generations are extremely frustrated. I mean, I've got a 22-year-old boy, and I talk to him and I talk to his friends, and they come from a very diverse background. They're not all from the similar background, and they're doing different things, but they're all equally frustrated, right? They don't like where things are, right? So that's concerning. That should not be the case. I mean, when I was growing up, yeah, we were uncertain, but we're also excited. When I was excited about the future. I was like, all pumped up to make something happen, do something. I felt I had no control, but I felt like I had a lot of control. This generation, to me, feels like they feel that they don't have a lot of control, because it's already being story is being written by other people.
That's a powerful way to start wrapping this down. Faisal, I do got one last question for you before we wind down, and that is, we talked a lot about the challenges, from like literally death to job loss, into like the end of humanity, and well, I shouldn't say hinted. You talked about that. These are all challenges, and what I love talking and saying to leaders out there is like once we get like completely inundated with challenges. And I literally had this conversation with a work colleague today because we're both equally frustrated with a certain issue, and I said, you know what, like we're constantly complaining, but there's opportunity here.
Yeah,
There's always opportunity with the
of
challenge.
course, of
So
course.
where's the opportunity space
Yeah,
that
I
we
mean,
can
look,
seize?
there's all. I mean, there's tremendous an amount of opportunity if we learn to balance this. So, for example, let's say you're a researcher, right, and you want to produce greater research than you've done. Compare yourself with yourself, right? As an example, I can do much more exhaustive, faster research than I have ever been able to do because of the vast amount of data that's being crunched by either publicly available model or the models that I can create. Right, so using the algorithm or the software and the hardware that's available, that's an opportunity. I'm not doing that to replace anybody. I'm doing that so that I can get to the answer faster, right? You have a critical patient to get the patient best care. You can do that a lot faster than you ever been able to. I mean, you talk about kind of tongue-in-cheek joke about Windows. I remember when the DOS came in and I got all excited because I wrote a middleware software that could take the data from VAX and mainframe and drop it on a desktop so that the person who knows nothing about the computer and doesn't know how to run a job at night to crank out those printout from the mainframe could see the data on a desktop. That would take days and days and hours and hours. You can do this in a nanosecond now, right? That to me is enabling somebody to do their job better. There's all sorts of opportunity that exist and will exist because of this sort of technological evolution that we're going through, that will make our lives better. The question is that going to be all, or are we going to swing the other way? That's really the question. So I don't have any doubt about. Look, I mean, we started at some point. I said that I mean, cancer is a very near and dear. I hope my son is doing well and he is in remission, but there's no cure, right? I'm hoping that within the next 3 to 5 years there's a cure, right? So there's so many examples like that we can go after, right? I mean, look, there's thousands of people who are homeless. There are millions of people who are jobless. There's children are starving. You can do so much good because of technology. With all of that, that's the opportunity. Imagine a farmer in Africa. I actually seen this example by a company a couple of months ago when I was in London. This company has built up this AI app using all publicly available technology, accessible technology, nothing, no R&D, nothing. They're just taking that and pulling it together. This app like can look at the farmer can look at the app. The farmer is not educated, and the area is it's multilingual, multicultural, but he can take a photo of a plant. And the app suggests which kind of fertilizer is going to be best utilized for that particular plant. That's a hugely impactful thing because then the farmer can grow better crop than he could have done before, right? And the company that are giving the app are the producer of that fertilizer who's helping reaching out a market that they wouldn't be able to because it was not accessible, right? That is all possible because of technology, right? So when you start thinking about all that, you get very excited. So this is why you saw in the book. I mean, we have kind of this like a dual mentality and kind of like pessimistic and optimistic at the same time because that's exactly where things are. right? So, and where we go is totally up to us. I think you saw last page of the book. We ends with the fact that what will happen to humanity is completely dependent upon us. It's not, I mean, it's everybody. It's what you do, what I do, collectively, what an organization do, a government do, and then global society do or doesn't.
That to me is such a great way to wrap this show up, and talking about those amazing possibilities. Happy for you. Super proud that your son is in remission. Unfortunately for me, I lost my mother to cancer. So hopefully those, that breakthrough does come to, because of AI. And I think that's probably the takeaway for the leaders out there. As we wrap this episode up, is like, okay, well, what good can your organization do with this insanely powerful tool that's just at the beginning? It's that Pentium 4 right now. It's literally just starting. And we can use, just like anything out there, we can use it for good, we could use it for bad. And let's find ways to use it for good, so that others don't have to go through things like that you and I had to go through with our loved ones. And who knows what the possibilities are, but it takes someone standing up and saying, this is what we're going after, to have the vision and the intention behind it. And that's what leadership is all about. So Faisal, thank you so much for taking time. Super passionate about this. Like, oh my God, we could, I could tell you could keep going for hours. But you had an early day and you got an early day tomorrow. So let's get you wrapped up and get you to bed. But before we do that, final thing of the show, as always, how can people find you, follow you, be part of your journey if they're not already? Sir, all over to you.
Look, I mean, you can go to my website, which is faisalhaq.com. You'll see my work and writing. All the writings are practically for free. The books are for charity. Buy any of my books; it will be helping cancer research. Share extensively on LinkedIn. That's kind of my social platform. So if you are on LinkedIn, follow me on LinkedIn. I try to push out some daily nugget every day, and I usually write at least one article a week, if not multiple articles a week, in different platforms. So please benefit from that. Learn, share, and give me feedback, because you can, and I will take that and try to make something out of it. At least my organization will, if not just me.
Awesome. And for you listeners, always, it's easy. Just go to lead.boss.com/ this episode number in digits. And they'll take you right to the show notes, and all links are there and so much more. Again, sir, thank you so much. It's been awesome. It's always a pleasure having you on the show. You're always welcome back anytime. Thanks again.
Thanks for having me, Scott.
And that's a wrap for this episode, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast. But you know what you could do to truly support the podcast? And no, that's not leaving a rating and review. It's simply helping a friend. And that is helping a friend by sharing this episode with them if you think this would resonate with them and help them elevate their performance level, whether that's within themselves, their teams, or their organization. So do that. Help me, help a friend. Win-win all around. And hey, you look like a great friend at the same time. So just hit that little share button on your app, and then feel free to fire this episode to anyone that you feel would benefit from it. Finally, there's always more. There's always more lessons around being the highest performing leader that you can possibly be, whether that's for yourself, your team, or your organization. So why don't you subscribe? Subscribe to the show via movingforwardleadership.com/subscribe. And until next time, lead, don't boss, and thanks for coming out. Take care now.